Hi, Mark.
Hi, Debbie. How are you today?
Good. How about you?
Not bad. That's interesting.
We could get several people. Yes.
Oh, beyond the.
Yeah. Well,
Okay. It'll be interesting to see how this goes.
yeah.
Kind of different.
I know Christina was really impressed with Steve, so
Okay.
looking forward to meeting him. And are you back at work full time? I mean, just working at home at all, or are you back?
I'm basically still working at home full time.
That's saves on gas.
Yeah. I actually went into my actual office yesterday for the first time in 5 months because I was getting new office furniture and I needed to go clear out a whole bunch of junk. So I got to go in and clean my office out. And the whole building is just deserted. I mean,
I remember, I mean, it felt really weird just even coming back to work. And
yeah. Where are you? Are you going into the building now?
yeah, we're all here now full time.
Okay.
We I mean, everybody pretty much kind of stays in their offices and
Yeah.
you know, careful around everyone, or we wear our masks when we have to go into offices or bathrooms.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have not really been requested to do that. It's been more presented as an alternative. When you go in, then you have to engage in all these precautions. And for a long time, I was teleworking 2 days a week already before any of this started.
Okay.
Just because they have a liberal policy about it, so I took advantage of it. And my office is not even far; it's Wadsworth, so driving to the office is not a major inconvenience. But shoot, I can work from home. Okay, I'll do it. I'm on the computer all day anyway. Computers and phones, you know.
Yeah.
So, hi, Christina. How are you?
Mark, I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing just fine, thank you.
Good. You have excellent lighting and picture on yours. Mine looks
Yeah,
fuzzy.
that's an actual picture of a trip I did a year or two ago.
Look at that.
It's in Dinosaur. It's the Green River in Dinosaur National Monument. Although the river in this, it wasn't very green then because there was a heavy rain event right as we arrived in this float, and so it flushed. It took about 24 hours, but it flushed a bunch of material in. And
wow.
The river, but yeah, it's a really beautiful spot. That spot is Steamboat Rock.
Okay.
Which is in Echo Park up in Dinosaur.
Very nice.
Out a little off the beaten track, even for Western Colorado, but
yeah,
spectacular once you're in there. And if you like riding on inflatable boats, it's an awfully good place to do that.
yeah, for sure. That's awesome. I'll have to check it out eventually.
It's cool, yeah, it's cool. And actually, you could drive. There's an access point. You can actually drive down the park. This is one of the couple spots along the river that you can actually get down to the canyon bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Hi, Steve.
Everybody.
How are you?
I'm good. You guys have much fancier backgrounds than I do. So Debbie, sorry we couldn't get this figured out easier. I don't know why I had such a hard time with this.
You know, actually, Steve, I figured out why I was not able to make you an alternate host.
Really?
Talked to somebody else in the city clerk's department or division, and we can only make those under the city's account. setting. the
Okay.
So said, now I know.
Well, you know, there's rules and regulations for everything, so I don't know what to tell you.
Yep. Well, now we know for next time that.
We do. Well, if you don't mind sending the invite out for next time, that would be great. And I got an email from the individual who I think is representing the Unleashed group. It's a Porvy Fenning.
Yeah.
I'm happy to pass that email along, or if you already have it and just want to include her in the list, that would be great.
So I did. Oh, if you have her actual email rather than Wood Unleash.
I do have her actual email. Do you want me to tell it to you or email it to you, or?
How about if you email it? That would be fantastic.
Okay, I could do that.
Thank you. And I did talk to or email, or she emailed me not too long ago.
Okay.
I think she should have a link to tonight's meeting.
Okay, well, she emailed me for kind of an idea of the direction we were going to go, and she did not ask me for a link, so I'm guessing she has one.
Okay.
So Steve, since staff are auxiliary, do you want our cameras on or off until, what's your thought on that?
So I would like your cameras on, and I am also going to ask you guys the same question. I'm going to say, what point of view do you bring? And from your perspective, what do we need to pay attention to? Because you have history and knowledge around all of this. So I think it'd be great if you just had your cameras on and jumped in as you feel comfortable with all of us.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
And I went ahead and turned my camera off, and I will mute my mic. So, and then I will take notes as discussion is.
Perfect. So, Dave, where's your moose from?
Red Feather Lakes.
Wow. Those things are so huge.
They're even bigger when you get closer.
I'll bet. My kid, I've got a kid that lives in Alaska, so I've been as close as I wanted to be to those things, and they are really big.
They're pretty amazing to see out in the wilderness.
I'm sure.
Dave, do you hunt them or you just take pictures of them?
I hunt to take pictures.
You gotta hunt them up to take a picture of them.
Yeah, that's what I do, is take a picture. But I got to tell you, there came to be a point where we were driving, we were, up south of Anchorage, and I would turn to my wife and go, "Do you want a picture?" She'd go, "No, we have enough."
Yeah, we're done. Yeah.
Yeah, we have enough.
Hey, Dave.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Dave, you look like one of those enforcement guys in that shirt.
Well, maybe.
Well, maybe, huh? Welcome, Stephen. I think I see that you're there. I don't see you, and I think you're on mute, but that's
I am, sir. I'm here. If I
Good
need to
deal.
join on video, I will. But right now, I'm just outside enjoying the weather. But my hair is all over the place, so I was gonna listen in if I needed to.
Well, I think it's probably helpful to have you on video when we get started. But if you want to enjoy the nature around you and sit off video for a few minutes, I think that works fine.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
everybody
we'll
has
see.
to deal with everybody has to deal with my hair being all over, so it's only fair.
Yeah,
if
I'm
you-
not sure what. I think a lot of the council, the subcommittee and stuff. I think largely we're probably going to listen more than talk, is my guess, because we thought we had a fairly workable solution, then it got kind of shot down in flames by the city council. I think because of a lot of the people that are calling in on the phone. So we'll see what actually happened with it.
Well, funny you should ask that, because I'm going to ask a question around that when we get started. So sounds like you can probably help me out a little bit with it.
I'll help if I can. Yeah.
That sounds perfect. You know, on Zoom, everybody's picture keeps bouncing around on the screen, and I'm trying to pay attention to who's on, and I just get it, and then it bounces. So
Attendee list on here, some participant list.
Yeah, there's a participant list at the bottom. If you click on that, it pulls it up to the side.
I'm not even in the meeting yet. I can't see, for some reason, I'm not even in the meeting.
Okay.
So we may need to, I thought I already
Let me see.
had meeting loaded on here.
So I can see you. Are you Penby? Is that how you say that?
It's Purvi.
Porvy. Okay,
Yep.
I am sorry. I'm Steve.
Nice to meet you, Steve. I just have one quick administrative thing for Debbie.
Sure.
Debbie, would you mind sending a link to a new link to my colleague Paul, who's also the other representative for Englewood Unleashed? He can't seem to get in with the link that he has.
Yeah, what is, I was gonna say, do you want to give me his email address over the record? Actually, let me
Sure.
pause a second.
So I don't see Alan. Jake, where's Jake?
Jake will not be at this meeting. He had a medical reason for not
Oh, that's
attending.
right. He did email me. My mistake on that.
Yeah.
And Alan, is that you under the Pirate Youth Sport tag?
My name's actually Michael, but I'm here with Alan. Had something come up, but I'm I'm a soccer director for Pirate Youth Sports, and so he asked that I attend for him. So I told him I'd be happy to do so. We kind of chatted and have an idea of
Perfect.
what we need to chat about. So
Perfect.
I'm him.
So, okay. I'll try to make sure I keep your name separate or straight from him.
No
and
problem.
Martha, it looks like I'm missing Martha still.
Yeah, I don't see her yet.
Okay, let me wait about another minute, and then I certainly appreciate everybody being on time, and so I want to respect that, and we'll move forward and get started.
I think what we'll do while we're troubleshooting, Steve, just so that we don't delay everyone, is Paul's just going to come sit next to me.
Okay. You'll have to sit close to him. Hope that's okay.
Yeah, we were trying to be, a little bit socially distanced, but
Yeah.
this is Paul.
I guess it's a good thing I'm here, because if I was home, I wouldn't even be on. So.
Paul, I just a few minutes ago, or just a minute ago, so you should do that.
Great. And let me just, is there a chat function in this Zoom?
I don't think so.
I do not see a chat function. So.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to see if I could just make sure that the email's correct and all that. I could just send it to you. But that's fine.
This is Dave.
Okay.
Just want to let you know, I don't believe we're permitted to have a chat function on this because now that it belongs to open meetings, that would not be viewable to the public.
Oh, got it. Understood.
There's Paul.
Okay. But Paul, it looks like you're coming on, and it looks like that's
There we
working
go.
for you. So
Okay.
good deal. Good deal.
Yeah, just do.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go back over there?
Okay, maybe I'll switch back around now.
Okay.
Yeah, if you guys sit too close, you'll get feedback. You're on mute.
We'll keep one of us muted so that there's not feedback.
Okay, perfect. So I don't see Martha yet. Christina, it seems to me like we probably ought to go ahead and get started. You okay with that?
I'm fine with that, yes. And this is going to be posted so others, Martha and Jake we know couldn't make it tonight, but this will be posted. So they may be jumping on at future meetings. We'll have potentially 3 meetings, and as long as they've watched this, I think that'll be fine. So
perfect. Great. Well, I want to officially just welcome everybody. And I want to say thank you for taking time out of your Tuesday evening. I know how valuable evenings are, and I'm certain some of you have probably been on multiple Zooms already today. And so I appreciate your willingness to take some time. I've got you officially, I think, until about 6:30. If we're making some good progress, I might spill over for a few minutes after that, if that's okay, but won't take much more of your time. I know this is a challenging subject. In fact, I asked Christina if she had some background information, and she said, yeah, let me send you something you might look at. And she sent that over, and I think it was 150 pages, and I thought, oh my goodness. So there is a lot of passion about this. I think if you own a pet, you're passionate about your pet. If you don't own a pet, you're passionate about how pet owners take care of their pets. And I think either way, it's a challenging subject, but certainly an important one. And we've got 3 meetings scheduled to accomplish, I think, a pretty big task. And so what I'm thinking we'll do is, I understand this will be posted up so that people can look at it. Also, those who are absent can review it. I will also be in touch with you between meetings. I don't want to let 2 weeks go and just sit. So there'll be some probably emails back and forth between meetings to make sure we're as productive as we can be. I will also, well, I should say Debbie's on taking notes to make sure that we get this all captured. But Debbie and I will work together to get a summary out so we can build on what we've accomplished in our meetings and keep it moving forward. Couple of things I need from you. I need you to be fully engaged and honest in your perspective and where you're coming from, but I need you to do that respectfully. We don't have to agree with each other. In fact, most of the settings that I'm in, there are several different opinions. I'm okay and perfectly fine with that, but I'd like you to do that respectfully. And then I think it's always important for us to just set out on these processes by making sure we listen to understand. And that's an important type of listening, so that I understand your perspective. Again, I don't have to agree with it, but I think understanding that is pretty important. That's kind of my expectations. Any questions about that? You guys good with that? Okay.
I'm good.
I see some shaking heads, and then a couple of you guys aren't on video. So if you want to get on video, that's fine. If this is just really absolutely not a good time for you to get on video, then, I suppose that works also. What I want to do this evening is take just a few minutes on introduction. I sent the email out and said, if you could take, a minute or 2 and tell me what you bring, kind of your point of view to this group. That's going to be helpful for me, and I'm sure it's going to be helpful for some of the others on the Zoom. And then from your perspective, what are the specific issues or concerns that we need to make certain we pay attention to? And then we'll move into the discussion that I talked about, key opportunities and challenges, what might we be overlooking, and what additional information do we need? So if there's any questions up to this point, ask me. If not, we're just going to jump in. Okay, I'm jumping in. I have all of these little pictures of everybody on my screen, and I don't know what order they're in on your screen, but I'm going to follow my screen and just ask for each of you to take that minute or two. And again, what point of view do you bring, and what do you want to make sure we talk about from an issue and concern perspective? And, you know, Mark, I've got you first up in my left-hand corner. So do you want to lead off in this?
Mark, you muted.
You're sorry about that. Yep.
My bad. You'd think I would know better because I do these things all day long. Yes, I'm Mark Husbands. I am currently the chair of the Englewood Parks and Recreation Commission. I've been on the commission for a number of years. I think it might go back to 2013 or 14 or somewhere in there. I also am an Englewood homeowner and a dog owner, and I have other pets as well. So I guess the perspective that I bring is you know, as a person who's been exposed to dog-related issues on the commission, including information provided by folks from Englewood Unleashed, from Pirate Youth Sports, information from staff who, you know, looks after the condition of the parks, information from code enforcement that tries to enforce the rules and deals with, you know, some of the problems that arise when there's you know, unlawful activity or you know, problems in the parks. And then also my perspective as a resident and a homeowner and a pet owner. I do use in particular Canine Corral. There's a few other. I generally am a user of, you know, fenced dog parks, and I do have the opinion that those types of facilities are an excellent way to resolve a number of the problems that I think we've seen on the commission with unleashed dogs. Otherwise, you know, as a Englewood citizen dog owner, I generally use I just walk my dog in the neighborhood leashed. So I guess that's sort of the range of perspectives I bring.
Okay, appreciate that. Thanks. Christina, I've got you next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christine Underhill. I'm the Director of Park, Recreation, Library, and Golf for the City of Englewood. My oversight is park management and then usage of the parks and how the parks are used on a daily basis. The first thing I'd like to see is reduction or reduce our conflict that we know we've been having with the various types of users in our parks, whether it be off-leash dogs, sports groups, people going out to have picnics, playing on the playground, basketball, you name it. We've had all types of conflict. The current one is, and it's been going on for some years, is the off-leash dogs. So we'd like to see some reduced conflicts of that. The goal is to keep our parks safe and attractive for all users. And the goal is not to get dogs out of the park, in my opinion. I love dogs. I have 3 myself, 2 now. I lost one a couple weeks ago. But ultimately, we want to make sure everybody's enjoying our parks. I know the social aspect is a big piece of this. There's a lot of love for Englewood parks, which makes me proud of our parks because our users are and our residents are very proud of those. You know, and so we don't want to lose that. So ultimately, the reduction of conflict is where I would like to see this task force go. Whatever that ends up being, that is up to you all.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks. Dave Lee.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dave Lee. I'm the open space manager for the City of Englewood. I manage the golf course and all of the park and open space areas. I think I can preface things by saying that I've been here since the inception of the off-leash of the original dog park task force of the formation of Englewood Unleashed and the Canine Corral. So I bring probably a long history of what has gone on through the years. And as far as I'm concerned, just managing the conflict, because I end up hearing both sides of it. This has been an issue really that has gone on almost since the inception of the off-leash areas. And we deal with it not daily, but quite frequently. And then occasionally conflict really escalates and it gets heated up like it kind of has been over the last year or so. So that's my take on everything. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Monica, I have you next in my little window.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, my camera's not working, I don't think. Can you see me?
Nope, I can't see you, but I can hear you.
I'm sorry. I tried to like leave the meeting and come back, but it's just not working for some reason.
Okay.
So I am here because I work on two committees that kind of overlap on this issue. So I just joined the parks and I work with code enforcement also, and I'm relatively new to that committee also, but I'm a homeowner, a dog owner, and a dog lover. I, have been all over my area of town with my dog, and I live near Bates Logan in the Emerson Park, so I'm familiar with the issues that are going on around there. And I can see it from both sides. I understand the safety concern for people who are not pet owners or who have had negative experiences with dogs off leash, and I think having fenced in areas is definitely safer, but there's something to be said for our beautiful open spaces here in Englewood. So I'm really hoping that we can come to a consensus because we love our pets and we love our parks.
Perfect. Thank you. Paul, you're on mute, so you want to hit the unmute button.
Okay, thanks. So my name is Paul Rogala. I'm an Englewood resident. I've been visiting the Englewood off-leash parks for about 11, 12 years now. At least
so Paul,
with
let me just jump in for a second. I'm getting feedback from you. Is there some place that's?
Yeah, turn your sound down.
My
I think I'm.
Okay, you're still on mute. So did you get the sound figured out?
Okay, let's try this. This should work a little better.
That sounds better. Good.
Now I need to turn my sound up so I can hear. Okay, actually, I guess I don't because I'm on. So,
yep.
Okay. Anyway,
Perfect.
So I actually live pretty close to Duncan Park. Although I started off with when I got Hayden. I started off going to Jason Park, and so that's usually where I end up going with Hayden. I've been an off and on member of Englewood Unleashed since probably about 2011, 2012. So I'm not new to being a member of Englewood Unleashed, but this is a new level of involvement for me. Hold on, there's a helicopter flying right now.
Yeah, that you can't change. That you can't change. Yeah. Okay.
I come to it from the point of view where I definitely recognize a cleanliness issue in the park. It definitely frustrates me that there are people who watch their dogs closely enough to clean up after them. You know, I don't recognize a lot of the negative interactions that I've heard about since I've been getting more involved with Englewood Unleashed and getting more involved in the whole effort this summer. So I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about that, because that's just something, negative interactions with people on the playgrounds, negative interactions with people walking by in the parks. That's something that I just haven't seen before. So it seems kind of odd to me that with as often as I'm in the park, that I've seen dog on dog conflicts, and once in a while dog owner on dog owner conflicts when somebody brings an ill mannered dog to the park. But there's a lot of there were several things I've heard this summer that those are the kinds of things that I just don't, the other negative interactions that I just don't recognize.
And we'll have a, let me jump in, because we'll have a chance.
I think I'll probably leave it. Oops, hold on. And I think I've gone way over my time, so let's go ahead and.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move to you, Michael.
All right. So again, obviously, my name is Michael Rittner. I am an Englewood resident as well. I'm the soccer director for Pirate Youth Sports. I assume most of you know about Pirate Youth Sports. We are the youth sports provider in Englewood since the city kind of gave up on them. I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago. So obviously, our biggest concern with the off-leash dogs are the kids. When we have soccer practice, baseball practice at Jason or Duncan, Bates Logan, it's probably our biggest complaint is that dogs are either on the fields when we get there at 5, 6 o'clock, or dogs are chasing balls, or dogs are, knocking a kid over. So I would say that is probably our biggest complaint. I have some notes here on my phone that Alan wanted me just to discuss, but obviously the cleanliness as well. I know, being a coach for both baseball and soccer, I picked up dog poop numerous times, both at Jason and at Duncan, all the time. Another issue that we have a lot is that our practices typically start at 5 or 6 o'clock, and when we get to the fields and there's dogs everywhere, or we have an altercation with somebody who says they have the right to be here, but we have actually paid for these fields, we don't really have any direction on, okay, we call code enforcement, but we know that code enforcement typically ends their day about 4:30, 5 o'clock. So we're just like in this gray area of how do we handle this, in the best possible way. We have lost some participation due to this issue. And really, we think that, having some type of fenced area to where, there's plenty of space. I know at Jason, Duncan, has some space, but just having a space to where we want the dogs still there. We're not, we don't expect there not to be any dogs, but just have it to be where our kids can practice, play safely. And also even on the playground. I have 2 kids. I took my kids to Jason Park for the very first time once they redid the playground. It was, I don't know, about a year ago, 6 months we weren't even allowed. And I have video of a dog going all the way up to the top of the new spiral slide. And the dog owner, it just didn't even bother him. So those are just the interactions that obviously most of ours are going to be negative because that's just the way it is. But, we definitely want to try to find a way that we can all be happy and we can still have the dogs there and we can still, provide a safe area for our kids.
Okay, appreciate that. Kate.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Sometimes I can't hear myself when I have earphones in. Hold on, I'm going to switch. Okay. My name is Kate, and I live in Englewood, have since 2013. I joined the Parks and Rec Commission in 2018 and took, the position of kind of being the leader of our initial off-leash dog force committee. So I had the really amazing experience of getting to talk to all of these groups individually and kind of putting their feedback together and doing the best that we could to find a solution. So I am really excited to have you here with us, Steve, and to be going through this process because I hope that it will help us kind of get to the bottom of this. So the things that I would really like to see us address is obviously so much of what everyone said, the cleanliness, the conflicts going on. I would love it if at our Parks and Rec Commission, no one ever came in anymore and talked about this subject. That would be a big win in my book. A girl can dream though. And then I think that also safety is huge for me. I, really want to make sure that all of the people of Englewood can enjoy the park safely. And I think another thing that I really want us to try to find a solution for this is so that the Parks and Rec Department and code enforcement cannot focus their time and energy on this issue and put their time and energy into the issues that we need them to be working on. I think that's a really big piece of this. And I think that the thing that would be so great is just for everyone to have more understanding of each other's position and see where the other people are coming from. So maybe, you can understand that dogs off leash is not the best idea for everybody anymore. Maybe you can understand somebody else's perspective into wanting to play sports safely or something. I just think that understanding for the group as a whole is what we should really try to aim for. And that's all of that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Lewis, I've got you next up on my screen.
Hi, everyone. Dave Lewis, I'm the Code Enforcement and Animal Welfare Supervisor. I've been with the city as the supervisor for 5 years. My role here is to represent the city from the enforcement side. That's both police and code enforcement, animal welfare. We typically are involved when it does involve some type of conflict, whether it's a coach calling us, which we've tried to accommodate later hours to try and help out those situations on random days. So we do have code officers that are staying at least until 8 o'clock on several days of the week and weekends now. So we are staffed 7 days a week, just to throw that out there. I've seen this conflict come and go, but this season has been the most challenging for the Code Enforcement Division in contacting and working with citizens. They've become more aggressive and more hostile towards enforcement efforts. They're trying to even come up with creative ways to circumvent the enforcement by posting things on social media, by calling people. When they see us in the area trying to do enforcement or education, they're running around warning people. I've just never seen it this us against them mentality, even if we're just there doing educational aspects.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see some type of conflict de-escalation at this point. Code enforcement has spent approximately 41% of our time in animal-related calls within our parks, whether that being behaviors from animals, behaviors from owners, not picking up, not being in appropriate areas such as shelters or playgrounds, interfering with sporting activities. We are really struggling, and it's really taking a toll on parts of the city that we need to be focused on with code enforcement. And we really prioritize safety, which is why animal welfare always goes #1 within the city of Englewood.
Okay, I appreciate that. Purvi, I got you next.
Hi, everyone. My name's Purvi Fenning. I am a Englewood resident homeowner since 2017. I have been a member of Englewood Unleashed since 2018, and then am now acting president, interim president since about June. of 2020. And my perspectives, personally or professionally, I am a physician. I'm a family physician. Personally, I'm a new mom. So I understand the protectiveness over kids. I am also a dog mom to a wonderful golden doodle named Lily, who, and to just kind of communicate how personal this issue is and why I took over as interim president. Lily and our interactions with people who are now our closest friends here in Englewood, at Duncan and Jason, are the reason why we have a community in Englewood, and the ability to let our golden doodle, train our golden doodle off leash, and then now allow her to very well behaved play with her Frisbee at Duncan Park pretty much nightly. This is around the time that we usually go, so she's having to skip her nightly Duncan Park adventure. But it's truly the reason why I'm taking out time to do this is because it truly impacts our day-to-day life. The fact that the idea of not being able to take Lily to Duncan and socialize with all of the community members that we have interacted with and developed relationships with would greatly detract from our quality of life here in Englewood. And it's one of our favorite things, mine and my husband's favorite things about Englewood is the off-leash dog parks, the unfenced off-leash dog parks. Let me clarify that. And I know that there are a lot of other members who feel the same way, citizens who feel the same way. And I think that regarding the recommendations that were brought forward, they really, the piece, I bring up the point about being a physician because they really honestly frustrated me because they did not seem to be supported by the own data published by the Parks and Rec Department. And so, like, I'm a very logical, practical person. If there is data to support completely removing the off-leash privileges at Duncan and Jason particularly, then I would be in support of that. However, I really do not feel that the data supports that change. And the recommendations and some of the statements made by the people in this call kind of fit with the schema of what has frustrated a lot of the Englewood Unleashed members, which is that it feels like because no one really wants to deal with the problem and come up with creative solutions, the solution provided was let's just remove it altogether. And that just feels really frustrating because, you know, we are the community members here. We are citizens, we are taxpayers in this town. And I really do believe that our opinions deserve to be heard and for our day-to-day life requests and services provided by the city be maintained. And if there are going to be changes made to it, then let's do it logically with good data, with good reasoning, because I think that's the biggest piece.
And I'm hoping that's what we're able to do. I see, Mark, you got your hand raised up. I've also got one more person. So do you care if I go with the one more and then, okay, Stephen, I've got your last, so.
I'll be quick. I'm Steve Young. I'm on the Parks and Rec Board as well as the subcommittee that wrote up the recommendations that were just being discussed. I'm a dog owner. I'm a homeowner in Englewood. I'm really here to listen. I am the newest member to both the Parks and Rec Board as well as the subcommittee. So Mark and Kate know a lot more about this situation than I do. But I thought in the recommendations that we had put out that there was a decent amount of thought and background put into it. I was not present at the city council meeting when those recommendations were put forward, so I don't know a whole lot about the how that situation worked itself out to where the recommendations weren't accepted. So I'm here just to listen to figure out, I guess, what those issues were and if we can come to some sort of an agreement so that Kate doesn't have to deal with this for another 5 years. I think we'd all really appreciate it.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Appreciate everybody sharing their perspective. I know it took a little bit of time, but I think it's kind of helpful to hear where everybody's coming from. Mark, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, is this an appropriate time to respond to something that I've heard that I think is a important issue to get kind of out there right up front?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm looking for issues to get out there, so let's do that. And I also want to frame the next step. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, this question about there being sufficient data on which to, make a proposal to resolve problems, came up I think in the last council meeting. And I kind of feel like it's an argument sort of like saying, well, there's no data to support the need for smoke detectors in my house because after all, my house is never burned down. In fact, there's tons of data. If you look at the right scale, city, state, national level, to support the idea that dog bites are relatively common. There are common reasons that people end up in emergency rooms, and they are disproportionately associated with children. So I just think it's important to accept as a working premise that reducing the potential for a serious injury associated with unrestrained dogs is a legitimate public safety concern and not a canard or a make-believe problem. It's true that although I know that there are documented dog bites in Englewood's parks, there hasn't been a major mauling that I'm aware of, but I don't think we ought to wait until that's the basis for this kind of dialogue. The idea is to create a setting in which the potential for that is eliminated before it happens. So that's kind of my perspective on it. And I think it's just really important not to downplay the public safety aspect of trying to, segregate some of these, what I see of as incompatible uses, particularly the ones associated with children, which was a rationale for the original proposal that the commission made. So I'll get down.
Okay, so I want to come back and talk about that proposal in just a minute. Kate, you put your hand up, and I know there's more conversation around data, so I don't want to get just completely buried in data right off of the bat. Kate?
I do not want to get buried in data either. So I promise you I'm going to make it real quick. So what I would just like to say about this data is I would like us to discuss it more because I'm curious what Porvi is thinking in terms of data to support these, because we did conduct interviews for 2 years with multiple people. We had people coming to our council. So our data to support these was from conversations. It wasn't like just we made it up out of nowhere. So just so that's understanding, because I mean, we talked with, I believe it's her husband multiple times at Englewood Unleashed to get some understanding behind all of this.
Okay. I'm going to put data on my piece of paper here. I'm going to come back to data because I think it is important for us to establish some kind of common foundation, some kind of common ground. And if we can do that, at least around an acceptance of a certain body of data, that will be helpful. I would like to understand a little bit better. I read through the memo that Christina sent me. There was a lot of work that went into getting to this point. And I read through the 5 recommendations that actually ultimately went to City Council. I think it's important for us to take a couple of minutes and say, what happened? Where did we run into roadblocks? Where did we run into some kind of problem with that? Because I don't want to put 3 meetings worth of time, our time, into that and somehow step in the same trap. And so help me out with that. What do we need to watch out for? What lessons can we learn from that experience so we don't end up there, 3 meetings from now? Anybody wants to jump in, jump in. Yeah, Porvi?
I do really want to respond to what Kate and Mark said because I'm a family medicine physician. So that means that I'm a specialist in preventative medicine and I deal with dog bites every day. We will shelve that. But I will
absolutely give you a chance. I promise.
That's fine. Let's just say that I do have counter statements to that.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing from the constituents that I heard over and over and over again regarding the recommendations were that it felt like the, and I mean, unfortunately, this is going to kind of connect to that first point. So Kate and Mark, bear with me, but it felt like to a lot of people, including myself, that what was published in the reasoning for the recommendations was not really reflected in the recommendations. Like it was very difficult to figure out from how the Parks and Rec Commission got from point A to point D, if that makes sense. The B and C, I couldn't figure it out, and a lot of people couldn't either. And I completely understand and respect that Kate and Mark and the rest of the commission did have conversations with people, and you're correct that my husband was a part of those conversations. However, there was a large gap of time in between the first conversations, and then also, to be perfectly honest, it really felt pretty disingenuous because the conversation and the interactions that were had with the previous board members of Englewood Unleashed were not really anywhere. It wasn't anywhere on Englewood Unleashed radar that the Parks and Rec Commission was looking to completely remove the off-leash privileges, or that off-leash privileges were a huge issue that were causing a huge headache. In the summer, June 2020, everyone on the side of off-leash park users was caught really off guard and pretty blindsided. And I think that is one of the major issues with those recommendations, was that it just felt very out of nowhere. Because as Paul said, most of us have not witnessed any negative interactions. The worst that I've personally seen is a 30-second, two dogs got upset with each other about a ball, and then the owners took care of it and they were fine. I haven't seen anything worse than that, to be quite honest.
Okay. Yeah, Michael?
I mean, just to go along with that again, from the sports side of things, like I said, that's our biggest complaint from coaches, saying that, and I understand that maybe you guys haven't seen it, but we're out there, you know, sometimes 2-3 days a week, and we have people negatively interacting with our coaches, saying that they have the right to be there. And I mean, times where people have said that they thought, you know, screaming and yelling. And so it definitely is happening.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was talking about dog kid interactions. I have definitely witnessed the dog sports interactions. That has 100% happened, and okay. I definitely do have some ideas around that as well.
So let me keep you to what happened at council. What pitfalls do we need to avoid? And I think what I heard from you, Porvi, was the rationale wasn't connected as well as you thought it or hoped it would have been between the data, the studies, the feedback, and then the decision that was made. And then I think the second thing I believe you said, was there wasn't ongoing communication to really keep the different constituencies moving along with what that decision might end up being. So let me check with the rest of you. What do we need to avoid going forward? I don't want to repeat. Kate?
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe I think that to answer your question, for me to understand a little bit better, maybe Christina or Dave could talk about what City Council said and why they decided to reject these things versus what the constituents and Englewood Unleashed and all the people that spoke for hours at that meeting had to say. Like, what was council's feedback and what did they feel was actually the issue? Because I personally feel like our recommendations were pretty good and I feel like they were pretty balanced. So if we have any idea, I don't really know why City Council didn't really want to do it, besides the fact that there was 3 hours of comments.
Yeah, I'd be happy. And Dave, if you have more to add, please do. Really, I think there was a lot of contention from the residents throughout Englewood and people reaching out to council. And so they felt that what we're doing tonight and moving forward in the next few meetings is more of what's needed, is more of a consensus from our residents of how to move forward with the program of off-leash dogs to reduce the conflict. So that's kind of in a nutshell, was just the contention from all the residents, the calls, the emails they were receiving. They did, take the recommendations into consideration, and it could be they may use some of the recommendation in the final piece after this group puts together their recommendations too. It may be an a la carte type situation that council looks at, or if we have a recommendation that there's consensus behind, if Englewood Unleashed and their group really can get behind whatever that recommendation ends up being, council most likely will listen to that and move forward. So again, it was contention and trying to do what's right for the full community.
Okay. Dave.
I just want to add something because I follow everything that has to do with animal control. I follow city council because what they say impacts my day-to-day operations and how we function and how my team functions. I also listen to other committees. I go back and listen and partake in those subcommittees and listen because a lot of them also do affect multiple areas of code enforcement, animal welfare. And I really have to say that the breakdown here was with parts of communication. And that's typically what I see within my line of work is we have neighbors who don't communicate properly, refuse to communicate, or don't want to listen because they have a very strong opinion on a particular matter. In this particular case, I think my concern was not concern, but I do have to give credit. This was discussed in open forums. It was posted. It was discussed in committee meetings with Parks and Recreation. It's all public information. It was not ever hidden. It was conversations I personally overheard at City Council. And it was even pointed out by a council member that this was not new. These conversations were not new. It's ongoing conversations. It's in the public record. So to say that this wasn't out there or not communicated, I feel is kind of unfair because the city is very transparent in the way that it presents its materials, and it has its materials available to anyone in the public. They just need to take the time to review that information.
So, Porby.
Dave, I actually really appreciate you saying that. I think one thing that anyone that's been a part of Englewood Unleashed will own up to is that the organization has been in a state of flux for some time, and that the organization was not doing a very good job of keeping in touch with the happenings in Parks and Rec and in City Council, and you're absolutely correct that is on the organization. However, I think if the organization had been informed that there was any of these rumblings of these issues going on, I think we would have been happy to entertain solutions at any point in the last 2 years. I think the biggest issue is that in the conversations that my husband and the previous board members had with Kate and Mark and the Off-Leash Commission, this was simply just not communicated, and that is actually, I think, documented in the same recommendation reasonings, like that it wasn't actively communicated other than the piece around pirate youth sports. That has been an issue for some time, and there were solutions provided and ideas provided that I think actually pirate youth sports, Englewood Unleashed, and code enforcement all agreed on. But those solutions didn't seem to make it into the recommendations either. But I will fully own that the organization has not been super organized. And that is actually why Paul is now the Parks and Rec liaison, because we want to be a part of the conversations and keep tabs on things, because we don't want to be blindsided again.
So let me ask, and Porby or Michael or Paul, I've got 5 recommendations that look like they came forward from the commission. Is it a matter of providing communication and rationale around those recommendations? Or is there just fundamental disagreement from either of your groups around those recommendations?
Fundamental disagreements.
Okay. Are there any of those recommendations that either of your groups think are good recommendations or comfortable with? I know you said two things. One, it wasn't communicated well, and one, you didn't feel the rationale had sort of connected between the data and the indecision. Are there any of those recommendations that you feel would be salvageable?
Let me pull them up and then I can answer
Okay.
that for you specifically. Is that okay?
That's fine. You can just hang on to that question. You can take a chance and look at that. Let me back up then. If you're saying that for the most part, the recommendations are not something that your group is going to be comfortable with, I don't know, Michael, where your group comes from when it comes to the recommendations.
To be completely honest, I haven't even seen anything about any of what has transpired. I just agreed to fill in for Alan.
Okay.
But
okay.
I know that it has been discussed, honestly, at every single board meeting. We have our monthly board meetings. There's 12 directors. We offer 12 sports. And it definitely has been an ongoing discussion at pretty much all of our board meetings when there is an outdoor sport going on. So as far as any of the recommendations or what's transpired with city council or the committee, I know nothing about it.
Fair enough. What I'm trying to do is figure out where we can kind of get a foothold and get started on, because I've heard everybody wants to reduce the conflict. Everybody wants to create a place where people with dogs and without dogs, kids, can all enjoy the parks. There's a half a dozen things that everybody on this screen agrees with. But then where do we find the first foothold to start going, okay, how do we address issues of safety, of able to be playing time, leash communities being supported, that kind of a thing. Porvi, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the recommendations again. And to answer your question, I think the fourth bullet, the Parks and Rec Take the Lead campaign, I think that was great. And I know that the previous board members, that was what they were privy to regarding the Parks and Rec Commission's efforts, and that they very much supported those as well. And I think the reason why the Take the Lead campaign is a great option or a great facet of the recommendations is because it focuses on education and involving the community, both things that I think are really important. And then to answer your question regarding where can we get a foothold, I would love to discuss some possible solutions that have come up over the course of all of these discussions.
Okay.
And I'm just waiting on the appropriate time.
Okay. So number four seems okay to you. Number five, creating opportunities for socialization seems like kind of an innocuous one. It probably works well for everybody if you have increased opportunities for socialization. 1, 2, and 3 talk about specific activities, either limiting the parks, closing the parks, that kind of a thing. So any other comments about the existing 5 recommendations, or should we move on to at least trying to list out some things that might work? Okay, let's throw some ideas out there, and then let's see what we need to do with those. I know, Porvi, you said you had some. I'm certainly open to anybody else jumping in with theirs. I can see hands. I can, you can wave at me, whatever you want to do. So I'll let you start, Porvi.
Okay. So regarding Pirate Youth Sports, I think that this one is something that has actually, the solution I think is within reach. I think that Pirate Youth Sports and the off-leash dog locations, I think limiting the overlap between those 4 parks would be awesome. And then for the times that Pirate Youth Sports feels that those 4 parks must be used, that there is a open calendar that is published far in advance, so that Englewood citizens, off-leash dog owners, can avoid those parks if they need to, because there are some dogs fully acknowledge that they're like Air Bud. They love everything to do with a soccer ball, a football, any ball. There are some dogs that are great off leash, except for when there's a ball around. And then they will be going after that ball. So if it's clear to those dog owners that there's going to be some Pirate Youth Sports activities that day, they'll go to a different park. I think that is, and the city of Denver has a similar setup where it's just on the city website. There's a calendar, the activities at each park are published, who reserved at what time, so that so that everyone knows. Because I don't think anyone wants the city of Englewood to not make money from those reservations. I do think that it could be possible for Pirate Youth Sports to not use the 4 off-leash parks as much. I understand that there's probably some limitations, but there are 16 Englewood parks, and I really feel like they should fully be utilized as well to try and reduce the amount of time that there is overlap.
Okay.
That's idea number 1.
Okay, that's 1. If you got some more, hang on to it. Mark, you had your hand up. You're on mute.
Sorry, I was going to ask for clarification about what it meant to reduce the overlap between Pirate Youth Sports use and the parks with open off-leash use. And I guess I would ask, what is the list of parks that Pirate Youth Sports currently uses for its fields?
I don't know if I can answer that specifically, but I'll tell you that we use for sure Jason Park, Bates Logan, Duncan, Rotolo, Cushing every once in a while, Centennial. So I understand that there's multiple other parks in the city, but when you have to fit a 60 by 40 soccer field on a park, I think it limits us honestly to like 2 parks. I think it's Jason Park and Centennial, or one of the upper, but it's pretty limited. So we honestly don't have that many options when it comes down to some of these, soccer, flag football. And I will add that obviously, Jason Park had to get shut down a couple of years ago because it got trashed, and we had to figure out where to offer our bigger kids soccer, and lacrosse had to play at Denny Miller on the baseball fields. Again, I don't know exactly the exact fields, but those are, I think, the majority of the ones.
So that'll be some information I follow up with you, Michael, and just make sure we can get that information, which fields can you use, which ones work. Porvy, let me come back to your suggestion. Does that mean when Pirate Youth Sports is scheduled for that field, that off-leash would not be allowed in that park? Is that what you're suggesting, or is that what that means?
Well, I think that it needs to be done in a balanced fashion, right? I think that it's abundantly clear that many Englewood citizens value the off-leash hours at the 4 parks. And then it's also abundantly clear that the city and Pirate Youth Sports also value that. And so I think doing it in a way where maybe everyone makes a compromise and everyone makes a little bit of a sacrifice. Like, so Pirate Youth Sports says, we have this field on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday or something, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the rest of the days,
sure.
If there's a bit of consistency, I think that will really go a long way, because I think the biggest issue right now is that off-leash dog owners don't know when Pirate Youth Sports are going to be there. They're surprised when they are there, and then and then there doesn't seem to be like a predictable schedule.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go with Steve and with Kate and then Dave Lee.
Okay, I'll make mine pretty quick, but I'll just point out that when we were doing the research to write up those recommendations, a lot of what we were hearing from Dave was that after they put the signs up at every possible entrance of all the parks stating the hours or stating the parks were not off-leash dog parks, that they were getting a lot of pushback from people saying they didn't know. So I struggle with the idea, depending on an unreliable, well, I don't say unreliable, an uneven schedule based on when games are published, to reliably think that a citizen is going to check that every day and go, when they would routinely tell code enforcement that they did not know the sign was 10 feet from them that said the dog hours are such and such and such and such. So I will point that out, that we did see that in the discussion before developing the recommendations.
Fair enough. Kate?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. That was great, because I was going to address that. I was also going to say that when we talked with Alan in Pirate Youth Sports, one of the things that we've recognized is, you know, with the scheduling, sometimes there's weather and things get canceled and things have to get moved around. So to keep this consistent schedule of when all of the sports are is sometimes a difficult thing. And then also to constantly be updating that, and how many people are actually going to be checking the website all of the time is another reason that we looked into that and thought maybe we could do something like that, but it's not that feasible. Also, with the 16 parks in Englewood, there's lots of things you need to consider when we're having sports events. There's like parking, right? Like I live really close to Clarkson Park, which is just this teeny tiny little pocket park, but you can't fit a field there and you can't have a bunch of people there with like their cars everywhere. It kind of affects the neighborhood too. So that's one of the aspects that we thought about when we discussed what we could do about the youth sports and the dogs. Just wanted to share that.
Fair enough. Dave?
Well, Kate's already kind of covered one of the issues that I kind of wanted to bring up, and that was these fields, unfortunately, are at off-leash parks. Jason Park has the largest soccer field that we have, and therefore it's heavily used. Same thing with Centennial, same thing with Duncan. We can't just set up a field in a lot of these other parks just because of the size, because of the parking. The other thing that I wanted to bring forward is all of my interactions with Englewood Unleashed have been very positive, very respectful. The concern that I have are for those individuals, whether they be in the city or outside the city, who don't know about Englewood Unleashed, don't care. They're the biggest problem that we have. So we have to be cognizant as we move forward. Any agreements that we make may fall on deaf ears from a large portion of the public who really doesn't care about any of this. So we're also going to have to tackle that issue as well.
Sure, sure. Mark, your hand was up. Is it still up from before, or is it?
Yeah, sorry about that. That was my previous question.
No problem. Paul, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, and regarding what Dave Lee was just talking about, regarding what now I lost it. That's okay. I just
you were talking about what you were talking about what Dave Lee said,
and I just lost my train of thought. What were you talking about, Dave? Would you mention that again?
I just talked about my interactions with Englewood Unleashed, which have all been very cordial, very positive. My concern are those individuals who come to our parks who don't respect the park, they don't respect the people, all of that stuff. And there's a large portion of the people that do visit the parks with their dogs who really don't care.
Right, and that's and part of that's on us. Part of that is on us who realize that who are involved with Englewood Unleashed, and just in general, there are a lot of conscious park goers, off leash users who recognize that there are other off leash users who just don't care, and we are trying to be active with them. We are trying to educate them. We are trying to call them out, you know, and say, hey, you know, you can't do that. You know, I'm glad Mike had mentioned the interactions with the soccer practices at Jason Park. Just out of recency bias, since there hasn't been any soccer there this summer, that had skipped my mind. I do recognize those. And I found some of those to be very, very cringeworthy moments, you know, and I don't want that to happen, and I want to call people out on that, and I've been trying to get more involved with that, and others who I've talked with, we've recently lost a couple of people at the off leash area who acted as a sort of not in the militant sense, but just in the who were very willing to call out people when they were being lazy or not working with their dogs. And so, you know, and so having lost them, it's definitely incumbent on the rest of us to take up the slack there.
I think that's a fair comment, and I jotted that down, and we'll have to come back and talk about how we actually start making that happen. Steve, you got your hand up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to real quick say that during the development of the recommendations, we were considering not only the fields that were used for athletic sports, but also we had a lot of participation from Emerson Park residents who actually pointed out and said that they had some enforcement issues, but they were willing to, I guess, monitor the park on their own. And they were the ones that were more actively involved than many of the other citizens who pushed to get that developed and get that pushed into the recommendations to make Emerson an off-leash park. Dave had pointed out a lot of issues with it, and they were willing to be involved on that end. And during the conversation of closing the few that we nominated to remove the privileges from, we were considering the spread of north-south and trying to get it spread across the city. So a lot of that was considered, but I just wanted to point out that similar to the argument that a lot of the parks that are available are not being used for athletics, we specifically chose Emerson because it wasn't going to be an athletics park. And the citizens were willing to take that on and keep it up because David pointed out that, you know, if it gets overrun, that it won't be as beautiful as it is. So just wanted to let that be clear that that was part of the consideration.
Okay, great. Porvi.
A couple comments. I think first and foremost to just, I think I should have said this from the get-go. Englewood Unleashed is a fully volunteer organization. No one is paid for anything that we do. And that should be, I think everyone at Parks and Rec should remain cognizant of that. If you've ever been frustrated by the organization's disorganization or lack of communication, I mean, it's a bunch of people who are doing this just out of the goodness of their hearts, and to expect a lot from those people is, you know, I think we just need to remember that. I don't think Englewood Unleashed should be responsible for code enforcement. We are here to partner with code enforcement with the city to keep the parks clean, to make sure that there's good lines of communication, but we really don't want to be enforcers of any of the rules, because that is not our job. You know, that's sure. We are all volunteers doing this out of the goodness of our heart to serve our community and be involved and engaged. The other thing is signage. There is clear signage, I think, at Jason. There is not clear signage at Duncan, and I don't believe it's really hard to make clear signage at Centennial because Centennial is just so expansive. People enter the park from all over. And then Greenbelt is kind of this long. There is clear, there's controlled in this area. Sorry? Oh. Paul just informed me that I am cutting out. How much of that did you guys hear?
Go ahead and start over with the second. You were saying about signage. You said that there's signage in the first couple of parks. You said Centennial was really difficult to get signage in because of its expansiveness. And I think that's where you started cutting out.
Okay, is that better?
That's better.
Okay, yes, so I think that signage is extremely clear at Canine Corral. It's fairly clear at Jason because there are 4 different locations, and pretty much at most of the entrances of where the dogs owners enter, it's clear. Duncan, I 100% do not think it's clear because there are only 2 signs and they're both by the children's playground and at all on the side where the dogs are and the dog users are. And I think Centennial difficult, Northwest Greenbelt difficult, but I just wanted to point that out.
So signage could improve in a number of those parks that you've mentioned.
Yes, and then one other solution to the issues regarding people checking the inconsistencies of Pirate Youth Sports scheduling and then the people checking a website on a day-to-day basis. I completely agree. It does take a lot of effort. An idea could be that the Pirate Youth Sports put out signs that they have with them, that there is an event that day and they just have a portable sign with them. And that way, even just 30 minutes before the Pirate Youth Sports event starts, if there's a sign there on the field, then at least people who are there will know that it's coming.
I would want to come back and talk some more about how we communicate this. There's a whole bunch of communication pieces around this. If the idea is to sort of schedule in Pirate Youth Sports and dog off leash and how we manage that, let's see if we even think that idea can actually work in the end. Let me go with Dave, and let me go with Stephen, then let me go with Dave Lee.
Thanks. Thanks for bringing those points up. I think those are great aspects to rethink or bring forward from Englewood Unleashed. The biggest concern that I have and what I've seen is we have a broken culture along how parks are used and how rules are used. And so part of the Take the Lead campaign was to educate the public. I really believe that Englewood Unleashed does hold responsibility and does need to take a part in being a part of changing the culture. Sheer enforcement of this culture does not work. We have seen it in the police department. We've seen it with community policing philosophies. Sheer enforcement does not work. And so we need to come up with a solution on how we change this culture, the culture that we've had in breaking the rules, disregarding reading the signs, coming in clearly non-off-leash hours. It does take citizens holding other citizens responsible in order to change that culture. And I have not seen a significant change in that, despite our education efforts and our campaigns to be out there in parks in multiple hours. So that would be an aspect that I would like to explore as a group, is how do we compromise and come up with changing and flipping the culture of how we use our parks and how the off-leash aspects are respected.
Okay. Porby, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that quickly, and then I'm going to go to Steve.
Dave, I really appreciate that. I agree with you, and that's part of the reason why we put forward a off-leash dog permitting option. because if there's permitting, then it's pretty clear which dogs are permitted and which ones aren't by a little dog tag that the dog has to wear, just like a rabies tag. That in itself is a public showing of the people who are following the rules and the people who aren't. I think that if there's a framework for that kind of culture change, like a dog permitting, then I think that is something Englewood Unleashed would absolutely buy into. It's just right now there's not very much framework. And then before this meeting ends, because I see that we're at 6:42, I just did want to bring up the fact that the off-leash dog hours were changed by the Parks and Rec Committee after all the city council stuff. Like right now, it's 6 to 11 a.m. p.m. year round. And that change is a change that really does not serve anyone, because as we all know, the sun sets by 5:30 in the wintertime. And so that's just asking for people to break these rules. That's a rule that will be broken. I can just guarantee it.
So I wrote that down. I'll come back to that. But I do need to get on to Stephen and then Dave Lee, and then I'll come back to Dave Lewis.
Yeah, I apologize. I forgot to take my hand down last time, so it's not me.
Okay,
Makes it easy.
Okay, a couple of things I wanted to address. Porvy and ask her, she had talked about the signage not being clear, and I'm all about clear signage. Can you be a little more, can you give me a little more information? Are you talking about the general rule signs for the parks? Are you talking about the hours of off leash? What signs exactly are unclear?
The signs themselves are very clear. It's the fact that they are not in a location that would be easily encountered. Paul, for example, the new hours that went up, the 6 to 11 a.m. p.m. hours that went up with the new signs that were installed at Jason. Paul texted me a picture of one of the signs from Jason, and that's how I found out. And then I wandered over to the ones at Duncan over that are installed, one by the playground and one on the very other side of the park, kind of honestly on its own, where I don't know how many people actually enter the park there to confirm what Paul had said. So the signs themselves, the text is very clear. I'm not saying that any of that is unclear. It's their location. My suggestion for where those signs should be would be at every single doggy bag station at Duncan. There's 3 of them. Put a off-leash dog rules or general park rules and off-leash dog rules sign right next to the doggy bag thing. I know that will do a lot to communicate.
Thank you. Steve, if I can jump in one more time and just clarify something on the change of the off-leash hours. That was a directive from City Council. That's where that came from. Their comment to us was that they had gotten feedback from the public, from the citizens, and there was too much confusion about the off-leash hours being 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. and during certain times of the years. So that's the direction that council wanted us to go in, so that it was simpler and clearer for everybody. So that's how that happened.
Okay, thanks. Mark?
Well, sorry.
Let me know, Mark, jump in. Your hand's up.
Go ahead, Porvy, if you had something to add there about signs.
No, not about the signs, just about the city council comment, but I can hold and wait.
Okay, and we can come back and talk about hours. I'm going to get close to running out of time here. So, Mark?
So I think I'm correct in saying that we're talking generally about our ideas about potential solutions and
correct
go forward. So I think a lot of I think one really great idea is the idea of some kind of licensing system to something that we discussed a lot in our commission meetings, and I think that there's a variety of permutations for how that could be implemented that could be really effective. So I think we should continue to look at that. You know, one of the things that actually is happening that we recommended is trying to create a park ranger position in the city. That looks like that's going to come to pass. I think that, you know, education and outreach efforts are, you know, all very worthwhile endeavors, and they can probably contribute to some problem solving. I also kind of come from the philosophy that, you know, at the end of the day, parks are designed spaces, and, you know, the most powerful tool you have to resolve conflicts, to influence behavior positively or resolve negative behaviors in parks is through design. And I just have a lot of trouble getting away from the idea that the solution is going to involve changing the way off-leash areas are designed. And yes, that probably means creating enclosures. And we have an example of an enclosed space where there are issues with it. There are issues with cleanliness and a lot of the same problems, but there's not issues with conflicts among different park users at that location. And I think one of the things that was a big part of the recommendation that we sent to council that seemed to get a little lost in the mix is that council should move forward and really prioritize a new space like that at Cushing, because it's already part of the, it's already in the plan, you know, it's part of the Parks Master Plan. It's I think a very good investment that the city could make in that park, and it would create a new space that would not be characterized by these conflicts with things like sports, kids using playgrounds, people renting pavilions. So that didn't really get highlighted in the council discussion, but, you know, I think that the way that we had thought about it is that, you know, there would be a process of phasing where we would start to look at creating more of these properly designed spaces, you know, that aren't characterized by some of the conflicts that we know are common at the parks that have open off-leash use, and look at the one that's already on the books and look at some other places, so that as we you know, remove some of the problematic interactions in places with an open leash use, there become other places where people can run their dogs off leash. So anyway, that's just my comment on sort of the general approach, and something that I think didn't get highlighted in the council discussion.
Monica. And you're on mute right now. There you go.
Okay, I just wanted to quickly support what Mark said. I really think the answer lies in design. And while I do think that certifying dogs that are responsible is a wonderful idea, we don't have the kind of vast open spaces where that would be effective. And when you have multiple groups of people using the parks for different purposes, the family coming to the kids' soccer game with their dog on leash is going to be different than the person who's throwing the ball. Everybody's got a different use. So I think that just from listening to all of you, the thought that kept popping into my mind is how married are we to which parks are dog parks? I mean, it sounds like youth pirate sports are the major interface where we're going to have the most conflict. The other parks are more like places you pass through, not where some other type of gathering is going to take place. Well, so I'll admit I don't know if you've addressed this, but have you talked about kind of removing those two entities and keeping the pirate youth sports on the fields where sports can be played and moving the dog parks to other areas? It just seems to me like the most logical solution. While I'd love to do the cultural shift that Dave Lewis is talking about, and I'm totally on board to help with that, it just doesn't seem like a realistic solution. It sounds like we're trying to thread a needle here. So that's all I wanted to say.
So I think that's a fair question. We're not going to get it completely answered this evening because I'm going to run out of time here very quickly. But at the same time, I think that is a fair decision or a question. One of the options is around scheduling with the youth sports. And I think you bring up an interesting one. Are there 2 or 3 parks that maybe youth sports uses a lot that aren't designated off-leash parks? So if that's another option that's out there we need to look at. Kate, and then I'm back to Porby.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that when we made these recommendations, looking into other parks was a large part of it. And that is why we suggested that the Northwest Greenbelt and Emerson Park, 2 parks that don't have playgrounds, don't have sports fields, become off-leash or stay off-leashed, and that we look into creating a new park. And I know I have a feeling what's coming in a second from some of the other members on this call is that Centennial, Jason, and Duncan are our most beautiful parks, and they want to take their dogs there. And that's all, I totally get it. They're beautiful parks, but there's, as Monica said, with all of the users, it's just really unrealistic to keep it that way with everything going on. And also Pirate Youth Sports, that's contracts. Like, we get money from them. We don't get money from off-leash dog people.
Okay, Porby. You're on mute. You're on mute, Porby.
Just to address the piece on city council requesting the change for the hours, we have contacted some of the council members, and we were told by them that they were not aware of those hours changes. So clearly there's, again, a bit of miscommunication. So Steve, I don't know if there's a way for you to follow up on that between now and the next meeting. That would be great. And then regarding the changing the locations of the parks, I think, I know that there are a lot of people who are going to be very upset if Jason or Duncan are removed as off-leash parks. But a park that I think is ideal for avoiding interactions from the playground and off-leash dogs is Rotolo Park, because by its design, to reference Mark and Monica's point, the gutter, the water control, I don't know what the name of that alley gutter is, but so forgive my ignorance, but it is a design separation between the playground and the field. So I think Rotolo could be a great option for an off-leash park, or a park with off-leash hours. And then there was one other thing. Oh yes, the monetary aspect. The permitting portion would bring profits. I think that is one reason why it could be a great option. I understand that it could be clunky, that a lot of the people who break the rules anyway may not permit their dogs because that's just another rule they want to break. But at least there would be a decent amount of revenue, and we have ran the numbers by our constituents in $25 a year, $30 a year. Everyone who was participating in those polls was very comfortable with those numbers, and then charging a higher fee for outside of Englewood residents, like Denver residents who use the parks.
Okay, Monica, and then Kate.
I just want to say, I agree. All the permitting you can do is great. I think all of our dogs should have licenses, and if we want to go a step further and get them, certified for off leash, that's wonderful. I just don't think it's going to solve this conflict, especially with the youth sports. So I think the answer lies in design, like you just said. That's all.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, so I've got 4 minutes left. What I've jotted down, if I kind of summarize it, is one of the options we're looking at is scheduling with youth sports and off leash, and figuring out a way to coordinate that, and figuring out a way to communicate that, and all of the details we talked early on about that. The second thing that we've talked about are design options, probably along the line of how do we do a better job of separating those who are with off-leash dogs and those who are just using the park as individuals, whether that's playgrounds, whether that's sports fields. We've also talked a little bit, not much at all, but we've talked about making some parks, making them not off-leash parks. Some of the parks that are utilized maybe more for sports and maybe more for the playground, that kind of a thing. And the fourth thing we've talked about is licensing. We've also talked about communication. We've talked about signage. We've talked about all of those different pieces. But I think those first three, licensing, I've listed that as fourth. I don't want that to drop off the list, but really the first three, I think we need to do some additional conversation around, and we probably need some more information around those. I also don't know if there's any additional ideas out there. So what I would propose is, let me get a note out to you tomorrow. Let me just identify and summarize these pieces. Let me ask what data we need to collect to see, or what examples we need to collect going forward, so our meeting in 2 weeks is most productive around at least a conversation around those three options. And then if you have any additional options, if you can email those to me so that I can get those very clearly on the agenda, I think that would help us move forward in a couple of weeks when we meet again. Comments, questions, any concerns about that approach?
No, I just was wondering when we were going to address the data piece.
So tell me what you would like to see in addressing the data piece, because I'm not sure where you feel it's falling short.
Specifically in regards to the code enforcement events at each park.
Okay.
I think that Jason and Duncan pretty clearly are not the problem parks in the data. I know that there are anecdotes of problems there, but the code enforcement data published just does not support that. Centennial, absolutely, the data supports that. Bellevue Park, and then a few of the other non-off-leash parks are clear issues. But of the four parks where there are off-leash privileges, unfenced off-leash privileges, the only data that supports any sort of change would be at Centennial.
Okay.
And then to respond to Mark's point about accepting that the idea that dogs bite children and kids get bitten by dogs, and that's why we should preempt this. I mean, I could write an entire thesis on why I disagree with that from a preventative health standpoint, but I won't belabor the point. Just to say that prevention mechanisms that we all decide in the scientific community are done based on data. If we screened every single male for prostate cancer, multiple men would die of the complications of the treatment for their prostate cancer, and not the prostate cancer itself, which is why the American Academy of Family Physicians and the United States Preventive Task Force resoundingly does not recommend screening for prostate cancer. If you try to solve a problem that does not exist, you create more problem.
So I will put the data evaluation on my agenda for us to look at next time. Let me check. Dave Lewis, are you the guy that I work with when it comes to sort of ensuring that we get the robust discussion we need around that?
So some data has already been presented to council and to members of this committee. I'm not quite sure what additional data I can provide that nobody here has already heard. Whether it's, I know that specifically dog bites were talked about, but the conflict that we're seeing within the parks is not necessarily around dog bites. The data that we're seeing, or the complaints that we're hearing from community members, is around how it's being used and the conflicts around use. So I'm not quite sure how my data around a dog attack is going to support changing how rules are enforced, rules are happening, or how a park is going to be used. So I'm kind of confused about that.
Okay. I've seen surveys, and I've seen a boatload of emails and anecdotal. responses to the issues of safety, the issues of cleanliness, all of those kind of things. I've not seen other than surveys and the anecdotal email information, I don't know that I've seen data. I don't know that there is data out there that, I mean, I don't know how, when it comes to cleanliness of parks, when it comes to encounters between park users and off-leash users, I don't know what data exists when it comes to that. And maybe Steve, you're going to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I can point out from a standpoint of when the subcommittee made the determination, the reason those parks were chosen was because it's where athletic youth sports and playgrounds were. I can't speak to any loss in data because I'm a little bit on the confused side too of what we're missing in that. So maybe that can be explained a little bit better. But the boilerplate of those three parks that were moved was a combination of citizen complaints, pirate youth sports, liability, and the fact that that's where playgrounds were. Okay. So I don't know how much further we can go in the data for that.
Okay, Kate?
So one thing I would like to discuss about the data too, this is some from my notes that I took during the city council meeting, but I have a lot of the people that were the off-leash people, whether it was with Englewood Unleashed or just pro off-leash dog parks, that were kind of spitting out a bunch of facts that I didn't know where that data came from. For instance, 51% of the signers on this petition that they had were actually in Colorado. The other 49% doesn't seem like they're in Colorado. So maybe we could also get whatever data that was, the survey Purvi mentioned earlier today too. Like, just bring it all to the next meeting. Let's get all the data.
So let's do this. I want to make sure that all of you have seen the recommendations that came out of the committee. So I'll make sure that that gets out to all of you as a group. And then I would ask you, when you look at those and you feel like there's a gap in either data or a gap in rationale, if you can identify that and get that to me in the form of a question or something of that nature so that I can try to collect that information and we can move as quick as we can, because again, time is really of an essence in this whole process. So that would allow us to frame that data information rationale discussion, I think, a bit more productively. First, I'm out of time. And I want to acknowledge that, and I can say we're all done, or I can go to Mark, I can go to Porva and Steve.
I just wanted to respond to the people.
Go ahead.
That's it. Otherwise, I'm done.
Okay, go ahead, respond quickly, and then I go to Mark.
I'd just like to clarify that my point in focusing on the data to support the changes, my point in doing that is to say that I don't think that the published data supports the changes. I agree that it's incredibly difficult to collect the data that we're looking for, but I fully agree with that. I just don't think that what was published supports the rationale for the recommendation. I think that's my issue, is that the Off-Leash Commission was trying to claim that the data that they published supports the recommendations, and I just don't think that's true. But I agree that it's very difficult to collect that reliable data. It could be done, it's just going to be extremely resource heavy and time consuming, and I don't think anyone is really interested in doing that.
Okay, let me go to Mark. And
okay, yeah, so I mean, first, about the question of data. Englewood currently is the only municipality that I'm aware of in the entire metro area that has not already eliminated this sort of unconfined off-leash dog use. Now, one possibility is that every other city, large and small, in the Denver area, and generally everywhere in the country, has overreacted and has eliminated that activity in the absence of data. Or the other possibility is that they've used the sort of data that they're likely to actually do, which is like the code enforcement data. It's not a fantastic data set, and Dave Lewis doesn't claim that it is. It is, it is not, we're not doing a medical study, and we are never gonna have that kind of data-driven basis for making a decision. about it. I think that the other cities in the area are not and have not overreacted to these sorts of problems. I think they've made a very simple and rational choice based on their observation of conflicts in parks, that they can resolve them by segregating those types of uses from each other. And so when the idea that there will be, and that we need to embark on some kind of rigorous data collection undertaking as if we're about to publish something in Nature, I think we can just set that aside and accept that that's not the kind of data we're ever going to have. And that's not the kind of data we actually need to decide about dogs in parks. The anecdotal data and the data, that the kind of information that Dave has, which is incomplete because there's lots and lots of incidents that don't get reported, I think is enough of a basis to paint a picture that there's problems and there's ways to solve them. So anyway, that's my issue about the data. I totally disagree that that it's fair to characterize the proposals we put forward as being, just simply arbitrary. They were based on information that we've received from the public, and no, it's not based on statistical analysis, but it is based on information that we obtained from the public, and there's a rational connection between what we proposed and what we were trying to resolve, which is conflicts between pavilions, sports, and playgrounds. So anyway, that's it. I think that we don't want to go down the rabbit hole of believing that a huge data undertaking can or will be part of this resolution.
I'm not understanding so much that that's what we're looking for. I think the request was a little tighter rationale, and I don't know whether that's something that we can do or not, but we are clearly out of time tonight. And so I would say, let me work on the summer pieces. Let me get that out to you over the next day or two. Let's continue this conversation between now and when we meet in 2 weeks, and we'll come back for another robust conversation. I do need an email for you, Paul. I have an email for Porby, but I would need an email for you. So if you can get that into me, that would be great. Other than that, I think we're good for this evening. I want to really appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate you hanging around a little bit longer. You all have my email and you have my cell phone. So don't hesitate to reach out to me between now and 2 weeks from now. So thanks a lot. I'll be back in touch and talk to you later.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.